Designer labels destroying Babel. The reference to Babel, of course, is this possibly historic, possibly mythological idea of all of humanity coming together back in antiquity, building the Tower of Babel that reached to the sky, and God getting very angry with their sort of pride in that and striking it down and scattering the nations of the world, confusing the languages of men. It's this reference point for the divisions in the world. The divisions of language, of culture, all of the things that place us into different categories. And the kind of bold claim of this idea of the Product Red campaign is that some of the biggest divisions might be reconciled. The division between the Western affluent world and the suffering, impoverished third world or developing world might be bridged, and that consumerism might be grabbed as a tool of that. I'm going to tell you how that works in just a second, but I also want to tell you that there's a big controversy that's just erupted only about a month ago over this whole Product Red campaign. A controversy over compassion is sort of a strange thing. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing that people would get up in arms about, but let me tell you how this Product Red campaign works. You, individual person, want to buy an iPod. So you decide you're going to buy the Product Red, the red iPod. Red iPod costs the same as every other iPod out there except that it's red. And $10 of that goes to the Global Fund. Global Fund is a fund that buys medications for people in sub-Saharan Africa dealing with a number of different diseases, but primarily with HIV/AIDS. That $10 goes and buys antiretroviral drugs to help people survive with AIDS. Anybody who want to grab the...
What's buzzing?
Yeah, I have no idea what's buzzing. Let's see if this works. Ooh, there, magic. Sorry, I'm always worried it's me buzzing. That goes to buy antiretroviral drugs to combat HIV/AIDS in Africa. And then hopefully out of that, you get so excited about the fact that your iPod did something good for somebody else, you tell other people about it, it spreads, other companies jump on board, and consumerism is kind of co-opted to have an impact on the world. That's the idea behind this Product Red. It's only about 6 months old in North America. It's been in the UK for just over a year. About a month ago, this other campaign jumped up, and it's actually really quite big. This campaign called Buy Less Crap. And it has some big marketing forces behind it, and their mantra is, join us in rejecting the tired notion that shopping is a reasonable response to human suffering. And so there's the controversy right there. The controversy isn't over whether it's worthwhile helping people that are just ravaged by AIDS. And if you're talking about places like South Africa, areas of South Africa, the incidence of AIDS is more than 1 in 4. So you look in just a little tiny room like here, a small group of people, and there'd be a number of people dying of AIDS because they don't have access to antiretroviral drugs that can extend their life. The controversy isn't over that. Of course everybody agrees that's worthwhile. The controversy is over whether co-opting consumerism is the best way to do that, or is a worthwhile way to do that. And that begs some big questions, probably us individually, definitely of us culturally. The first one, of course, is if you buy red, will you give less? If you decide, hey, I'm buying these products, how to make an impact. So I don't need to give when somebody comes to my door. I don't need to come out to the event here on Wednesday night talking about HIV/AIDS and hopefully getting people involved in making a difference. Because, I bought this iPod, $10 went, whereas maybe you might go, I have $200 kicking around, I'm going to give that $200. Instead, I'm going to give $10 and get an iPod for free. The question around that, and around this whole idea of co-opting consumerism, is really to say, do you feel consumer guilt? Consumer guilt is a great motivator for anybody who's vaguely aware of the massive rift in the world. Consumer guilt is huge. If you've gone to a developing nation, it is hard to grapple with. Now, most developing nations have this kind of nice storefront area with the big hotels where it's really comfy. But you get behind the storefront and you see what's really going on in a lot of places. It's rough. It's brutal. I've been in places like migrant worker camps in Mexico, and I'll tell you, it's a lot different than the Hilton. It's people working every single moment of their lives, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to feed their kids. And you throw in something like HIV/AIDS, which is leaving scores and scores of orphans, And that messes you up as a human being when you're just sitting in a coffee shop wanting something to drink and worrying about your own struggles and problems. That produces a kind of a consumer guilt. And Product Red comes along and either gives you a positive way of impacting the world, or if you jump on the bandwagon that's really against this thing, kind of pats your consumer guilt down a little bit and lets you get on with buying stuff and not worrying about the rest of the world. And a big fight's going over this, and stuff's going back and forth on both sides. But I think that there's a bigger question that's underneath the whole idea of consumer guilt, the whole idea of whether things like this Product Red campaign are worthwhile or not. And it's a personal question. It's a question of fulfillment, purpose, and position. It's a question for some of whether we've really earned the right to be in kind of the comfortable Western world. But beyond that, I think it's a question of whether we're just kind of random biological occurrences dropped into different places of the world without purpose, without meaning, for sort of a life of excess or a life of suffering. Or if you ascribe to that I wonder about myself, are we created, built, placed into the world with purpose and meaning? Is there something more than just the drudgery of life? Is it possible for little regular people to actually have a positive influence on the world at large? And if that's the case, then maybe there are other means of fulfillment besides just the consumer cycle. Now, I don't know. I haven't taken a position on whether Product Red kind of can really effectively co-opt the consumer cycle and make a difference in the world just through people spending money. I think potentially it's a good thing, but I understand the outrage against it as well. But I do know that the people that I know that have some sense of purpose in the world are the kind of people that bring light and hope into a room, into the lives of others. And they're also the kind of people that have fulfillment that compels them beyond the drudgery and the frustrations and the sufferings of regular everyday life. And I think those things are perhaps something worth talking about this afternoon. So to that end, here's a whole bunch of questions. You can get into the issue itself or anything underneath it. If you want, we now have our conversations spiraling out of this place online, so 24/7 you can drop your brilliant thoughts. If you're sitting there going right now, I have no idea, I just want my coffee, leave me alone, buddy. But at 3 in the morning, you're staring at the ceiling going, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired. I have the solution to the world's problems. You can jump online and you can put all your stuff there, and then you can be embarrassed the next morning when you realize what you wrote.